Welcome back to Film Buff Bros, and this week we're going to be looking at 2000 teens horror movies.
Before we get started, please subscribe and like the video so we can continue making more content for you.
We upload videos every week, so smash that subscribe button for more awesome content.
Alright, so my second favorite horror film of the 20-teens is Killing of a Sacred Deer from 2017, starring Colin Farrell and directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. For me, this horror film covers all the bases as far as cinematography, editing, story, dialogue. It's a unique film, from the music to the camera angles to the way the characters talk. But it's also a film that a lot of people either love or hate because it is so different. The camera follows the characters sort of in a CCTV, almost God's point of view. Right off the bat, in the first few scenes, you have a question to what the relationship was between Colin Farrell and the boy. And as the film progresses, you see Colin Farrell start to realize that the kid is not right in the head. The way the characters talk is really unique, but it's very monotone and emotionless. But to me, it represented the fact that the family is bored and sort of just going through the motions. I also like the fact that Colin Farrell's character had quit drinking 3 months prior, so that adds to the tension of the film. The dialogue is so ridiculous in this film, it sort of reminds me of Happiness, that it could borderline be called comedic, but I think it's just being very self-aware of itself.
My auxiliary pick for best horror film of the 20-teens is Another Evil. I almost chose John Dies at the End, but I think that Another Evil more so falls into that horror genre, even though both films are kind of horror comedies. For this one, there will be no spoiler alerts. I won't ruin anything. I just think you should go see the movie and judge it for yourself. However, I will say the third act really does a pivotal change where it is quite a different movie from the first two acts. The movie starts off as a horror film and then kind of turns into a comedy, and I won't say what happens at the end, but I didn't really like the third act at first, but now it's kind of grown on me. It was just such an abrupt shift in the kind of movie it was that I wasn't enjoying it as much as I enjoyed the first two acts, but that happens for me with most movies, and for this one I will give it kind of a pass because I see that they were going more so in the horror direction and just kind of throwing the audience a curveball. I think the movie is great because of the acting, namely the Ghostbuster, Ghost Exterminator. He was really good. He played a role in The Office, the American version. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I can't remember his name. He's great, executed that role perfectly in Another Evil, and I can't recommend this movie enough for people who like horror comedies and awkward comedy. This movie really straddles the line between horror comedy and horror, and it's really creepy and weird and disturbing, and I really like it, and I recommend it to anyone who likes indie films, horror comedies, or just horror.
My favorite horror film of the 20-teens is The Witch from 2015, directed by Robert Eggers. Right off the bat, it is another different horror film with a different setting. The production design and costumes, very accurate for the time, believable. I like the choice of the music and the instruments they chose to give it that old feel. It really did remind me of a mix of the Fargo score and The Shining. In the first 10 minutes, it sort of sets the tone with a very disturbing scene. I really like the way that they filmed the witches with not showing too much of the witches, and especially the first shot you see of the witch on the broom in the moonlight. For an indie film, I thought all the acting performances were pretty good, especially the father and the daughter. There's something intimate about the way it's filmed, a lot of close-ups, a lot of long shots, so you really feel that you're in a private moment with the actors and you're getting to know them. Lots of themes in the film as well, from civilization versus chaos to family turning on each other and how easily that can happen. The sound design in the film was also notable. The scene where the father and son are going hunting, the sound design, the music, everything feels very heavy, very brooding. Another sort of strange, uncomfortable part of the film is the fact that the boy keeps looking at his sister's body throughout the film, sort of suggesting an incestual relationship or a desire for that. And finally, I thought the ending was great. There's a long sort of build up to the last scene, and the last scene is short. The use of special effects with the witches, they're not showing a lot And it almost leaves it open for a sequel, but God help us if they ever do a sequel to this film, because I think it really doesn't need it.
So I'm going to very quickly explain why I like The Witch so much. So basically, as far as my criteria for what makes a great film, it is basically firing on all cylinders, from the score, the acting, the dialogue, the camera work, the lighting, the editing, to an extent, is very, very good, and the story virtually perfect. So I'll just jump into my criticisms because everything else is basically perfect. The pace kind of tapers off midway through the first act, and I think the reason for that is because so much instrumental and pivotal stuff happens so quickly in the beginning of the movie. So there's still a bit of suspense, and it picks up very quickly in the second act, but other than that, the pacing is phenomenal and great. My only other criticism is I think that they did not need to suck the saturation out in post-production. The editors and producers, director, or whatever didn't need to enhance the spookiness or the dreariness. So other than that, other than the slight lull in pacing at the end of the first act and sucking the saturation out a little bit, it's perfect. The score is sparse, has these spooky strings and choir, and the instruments are true to the period. There's some tribal percussion and some unique wind instruments. The acting is subdued and fitting for the Puritan pioneers. The dialogue is sparse, and the diction or word choice and language they speak in is true to the period. Camera work, various framing and angles used, slow focus pulls, tripod used. The lighting is natural, and the story has high stakes introduced immediately, and it maintains suspense throughout the movie, and there is consistent and frequent instances of dire conflict. The movie is awesome.
And that concludes our review for the top horror films of the 20 teens.
All the links are in the subscription, and don't forget to smash the subscribe button for all the new content.